Good morning everyone, my name's Titus, and today we'll be rounding out part 8 in our camera mini-series by creating the code to destroy our camera system. In the last video we implemented some Niagara system particle effects to activate when our camera is disabled or destroyed. So in this video, let's actually destroy our camera system. Alright, so going back real quick over into our viewport. So last time we called the Niagara system for the sparks when the camera is disabled. So now we're basically going to set up the code to actually destroy the camera system, and then we'll play the smoke effect. So back in the event graph, we already have a blueprint interface to call the event you shot me. So we're going to be pretty much doing most of the setup through here because it makes the most sense. Now obviously to destroy this thing, we need to implement some type of health system, which it currently doesn't have. So let's create some new variables. We'll call one just health, set it to a float, and we can set the initial value just to be 100. So it has 100 health starting off. And then on the event you shot me, we can drag and get a reference to our health, like how much health we have. And then we can do a subtract. We could minus, say, 25 health. You can make that whatever you want. And then we can drag health out and do a set. And then we'll plug this in here. And then we can actually plug in. Now, you can plug your health straight in, but if you want to avoid like negative values, you can do a clamp. And there's a math function for clamping float values, and then you can tell it to only accept values between a min and max. So if you don't want negative or you don't want to deal with negative values, you can just clamp it, drag off here like that, and that'll work pretty good. So now we actually have a way to damage our camera, but we need to check to see once the health has reached 0. So we can drag off this and do a branch check. And then if we pull this out a little bit further, we can actually just drag off this return value and do a Boolean check for less than or equal, so less equal. And so if our current health is less than or equal to 0, this will be true. And if this is true, it means it's dead. So we don't want to disable the camera if it's dead, so we will plug that into the false value. So now we need to drag off the true value to actually set up some dead code. What we'll do is we'll just come down here and we'll create a new custom event, and we can just call it death. And then going back up here, we can just simply drag up and just call death. And that code should work for our purposes. So now the camera actually has a way to lose health. But let's actually set up some death code now. So the first thing we'll want to do is stop our timelines, because the camera is always panning left and right. So we have that main timeline. Or if the camera happens to be shot and disabled, it has the disable timeline running. So we can expand out our components. And we can grab a reference to our camera movement and our disable camera timelines. You just drag off one of those and just search for stop. And then we can actually plug both values into the stop function, and it'll stop both timelines from playing. Now after we stop our movement components, we should probably maybe play an explosion. So you can just drag off and do spawn emitter at location. The emitter we can use, there's actually, if you use a third-party template, or the starter content, I think it comes with the explosion, so you can just use that one. Maybe scale the explosion up a bit. So I'll scale it by 5 in the X, Y, and Z. And then we need to give it a location to spawn the emitter at. So we can just simply drag out our camera reference, drag off that and get world location. And then plug in your world location into your location value. We don't really care too much about the rotation. You're basically just putting this explosion where the camera body is and then scaling it by 5, and that should be good enough. Now the next thing you might want to do is play a sound. And we do have an explosion sound, so we can use that by default. I'm going to pitch that down a little bit so it's not so loud. And after that, we're going to want to, you could destroy actor or components. In a lot of cases, in most games or most projects, you're probably just going to do destroy actor, like destroy the entire blueprint. In this particular one, though, we have some Niagara systems that we set up in the previous video that we kind of want to play. So if you do actor, it does everything. So we're just going to do component, and we'll plug in the specific components that we want to get rid of. So you can pick any of them and then just delete whatever reference it is. And I think for the components we're going to want to get rid of is we don't want to have a view target. So we don't want to trigger, collision checking. So that's a way to get rid of that. We definitely don't want the spotlight, because that's kind of visible, right? You don't want a hidden or a destroyed camera to still have a light bulb. And then we'll obviously get a reference to our camera. We don't want that anymore. And we don't want the camera to have a trigger collision for damage anymore because it's destroyed, so we can get that. And then I think that's everything we need. We're going to be using the scene capture. Well, we're going to be switching the scene capture to a different material, so we can probably ignore that one for now. So we can plug these guys in here. Oops. Like so. And after that, you'll want to activate our particle effect. So we can drag off a reference to smoke. And you can just drag off and say activate. And then we can drag a reference to spark. And this is kind of personal preference. You can do activate or deactivate. So I guess you technically could play sparks through the smoke. Let's see what that looks like. If it looks terrible, we'll just do a deactivate. Because remember, this will probably be activated from the disable, because the camera gets shot, it gets disabled. After it gets shot 4 times, that's when it actually gets destroyed. And then, yeah, let's actually test this out and see what it does. So we can aim and fire. There's the sparks. And now the smoke has the sparks playing through it. I don't think I care for the effect too much, so I'll probably just get rid of it. You can see we have some errors as well. Anytime you get like an error message, you can just click on the underline portion and it'll take you to the node that's actually causing issues. And it looks like it's relating to the code in our event tick, so we need to figure out a way to fix that. But let's go back here. And instead of activate, I'm going to drag off and do a deactivate. That way it's just smoke. To deal with the error messages we were getting, we just need a way to check if the camera's disabled. So that's easy enough. We just add another variable. And we'll call the variable is destroyed. We'll make it a float. Or I'm sorry, not a float, a boolean. So make it a boolean. And then you can drag out a reference to is destroyed. And then off your true pin, you can do a branch check. And then off your false pin, you can do a branch check. And then you can just simply plug in the is destroyed reference. If the camera's destroyed, you shouldn't be changing its rotation. So let's set it to false on both these pins. All right, let's give that another go. So it gets destroyed, plays the sparks, hit it a couple more times, sparks stop, and then we get the smoke. And you can see our scene capture is also still going, so that's still going to be a problem, so we'll probably have to address that now. We're still getting an error. Let's see, attempted to access camera via property. Okay, so still do. Oh, okay. So we made a reference to the is destroyed, but we never actually set is destroyed. So we have the same problem. So we just want to go into the you shot me event. And what we can do is I think if let's see, where's the best place to put it? I think we'll put it in death, actually. That makes the most sense. Yeah, we'll just put it at the end of death. So we can get is destroyed, do a set it to true, and compile and save. Let's give that another go. All right, and I walked over, still getting the camera feed, so we need to fix that. We got one error. Let's see, attempted to access the spotlight. So set visibility for the spotlight. So we have a delay of 6 seconds. So the code's waiting 6 seconds and then setting the visibility. So what probably happened was we shot the thing, it entered the, the actual check here. And then it kind of ran through, waited the 6 seconds, and in that 6-second window, we destroyed the camera. So when it went to set the visibility, it failed. So anytime you run into this, there's a few ways you can address it. You can drag off and do is valid, and do an is valid check, and just like plug in the spotlight and check it that way. Another way you can deal with it is kind of like how we did above, is you can just do a branch check. And on the condition, just plug in the is destroyed. So if the unit is destroyed, it should not run the code. It should only run it on the false, which means if it's false, the spotlight will still be there. So we can play that real quick. Destroyed that, destroyed, and I walked over here. And no errors. So that actually works. All right, but we need to fix the television. So right now it's still scene capturing. So I think the way we're going to handle that is we're going to change the material on a function call like we do damage. So for that, I made another fancy drawing in Paint, where it's just a black background with camera offline, but anything will kind of work. So we'll go to our textures, we'll drag that in to import it, and then I can right click and create a material, call m_cam offline, and then we can save it just to make sure it's good. And you can leave the defaults, that looks fine. All right, our TV is actually currently just an in-level object. It's not a blueprint. So to make this easier, we can just highlight it. Go to your blueprint icons at the top and do convert selection to blueprint class, and then do harvest the components. I'm going to change the location to be my blueprints folder, and then the name I'm going to call it as BP_TV. All right, and then I'll create a blueprint from it. And I'm going to call this TV, compile and save. And then in the event graph, we're just gonna basically call a function to change the material. So you can get a reference and just set the material. And you can tell the material to be m_cam offline. But we need a way to be able to check this. So I think the easiest way, since the code is running in the camera to actually destroy this thing under death, I think we could do it under death. I think that makes the most sense. So what we can do is go to our interface. We can use the damage one, and we can simply add a new function, and we'll call it feed offline. So now we got the declaration set up. We can go back to the TV, and on the TV we can go into the class settings and add our interface, BPI damage. The interfaces show up on the left now, so we can compile, right click and do event feed offline. Connect that up like that. And I think that'll complete the code for our television. So now all we have to do is go to our camera, and at the end of our code, we'll want to drag off and do a get all actors with interface. We're going to do our damage function, or our damage interface. We're going to cycle through all the actors with a for each loop. Plug in the array. And we'll drag off, and we're going to call the feed offline. Make sure you select the one with the message. And then simply plug in your array element output to your target input. Compile and save. And that should be pretty good for our death code. Comment death. So now let's see what this does. So there it goes down. Shoot a couple more times, offline. We walk over, camera's offline. Nothing too fancy, but it works. And we got no errors. So yeah. All right, everyone. I think that's, we'll cut it there for now. That's just going to complete this video anyways. I think in the next one, we'll set up, we'll do some more like fancy stuff. So we'll maybe play like an alarm soundtrack, and we'll probably add some widgets to do health for the camera system as well. And then maybe go over a few other things, but yeah. But yeah, I hope you found the video informative and it helps you out in your own projects. As always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and see you on the next one.